All right, so the Jets lose, guys. What's going on Unkillable, episode number 44, of course, 23-10, the final. The Jets now 2-9 on the season. You know, if you bet the Jets, and let's face it, even though the Jets covered today, I think it was 13 and a half at one point. Then it got bet up. I think it went off at 14. So the Jets lose by 13. So if you actually bet the Jets, they did cover. Although I would have to say at this point, if you're in the business of betting the Jets, you are a degenerate. You probably don't want to do that too much. To me, there were a couple of things here. I'll run through the two plays that really jumped out, and then I'll go a little bit more big picture. All right, so the first play here was Jets up 7-3, start third quarter. Ravens get the ball. Jets, minimal gain on first down, second down, third, and I think it was third and six or so. And you get a 34-yard pass interference on third down, which obviously, flips the field. And eventually, shortly after that, Derrick Henry pounds one in. So, instead of being up and then getting the ball, and again, who knows what happens at that point? I'm not going to sit here and say that I think the Jets would win the game. But, if you have the ball and you're up 7-3 and there were about, 4 or 5 minutes of that, maybe a little less, of that drive that would shoot up, who knows? Maybe the Jets put a few points on there. It's not like Lamar was moving around incredibly well. Jets defense was doing okay for the most part. Penalties always hurt them. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So that was the first key play. And then the other one, obviously, the Jets are trailing 20-10, and there's 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then Breece Hall, who made some really nice catch and runs, he fumbles at the 2. I get it. You're fighting for extra yards. That's a great strip by the Ravens. He had 2-3 bodies around them. A couple of Jets were in the area as well. So it's just a massive humanity. And, listen, you can't cough up the ball, but it wasn't because he was loose with it. It was because he was fighting for the extra yards. So, not that I'm here to give professional running backs a pass when they fumble inside the 5 and you're going for a touchdown, but a little more understandable than just being careless and carefree and loose with the ball and having it just kind of taken away from you. So if he goes down or if he gets in at that point, now it's going to be 2017 and who knows what happens there. All right, so those are the plays that jump out to me. I mean, I don't really know what you guys expect. The Jets are 2-9. They're fighting. They're definitely fighting. They were 2 touchdown dogs today. So nobody really thought that they would even hang around and compete. And for the most part, they did. So so one thing about Breece Hall, earlier this week, Breece was talking about, and it's a fine line before I even describe what happened. It's a fine line between, standing up for your teammates, protecting your teammates, being a vocal leader, which I always respect. I always admire, and I always want, especially for a team that's trying to learn, how to grind through and become a team, the early stages of, whatever the Jets will eventually become under Aaron Glenn. And, Breece Hall made a pretty big stink he tweeted out during the week. I think it was, I guess it would have been Wednesday when they had access there to the Jets locker room. And, he specifically pointed to Brian Costello, who's been on the Jets beat for a long time. I don't think Costello is a sensationalist. I don't think he's a troublemaker in terms of trying to, dig up stories that aren't there just to get clicks. I think he's good at his job, and I think he understands, what his job is. So, Breece Hall basically got, and again, very pointed and very, very clear that it was to Costello because he actually, I believe he used his name. I'm pretty sure he did in his tweet. And what Hall was responding to was Costello's pursuit of a response from Justin Fields, at that point, the starting quarterback, what his thoughts were based on the fact that he just lost his job. And there's nothing out of bounds about that. Like that's literally Brian Costello's job. So I just think that I think Breece Hall was a little bit out of bounds there, a little bit, not enough to go nuts. But when you do that, well, now guess what? Now, if I'm Brian Costello, and I don't know that he'll do this, and the game just ended, and the media scrum's going to, going to happen here in a couple of minutes. But if I'm Brian Costello, and I feel personally slighted here, where you're basically questioning either my motivations or my professionalism, whatever it might be, well, now I'm probably going to tee up an extra question or two a little bit more aggressively toward Breece for fumbling that ball. Whereas, no, you gotta ask about it anyway. But and I'm very curious how Breece handles that. And I'd be very disappointed if it's not professional. Again, guys, when you put yourself out there and now you start to color outside the boundaries of what directly impacts you, when you do that, you better do your job well. All right, you better do it well. And again, it was a great play by the Ravens, reaching in, stripping that ball, big, bodies flying everywhere. I get that. And Breece really made some good plays, and Breece Hall is a very talented player, and I'm happy they didn't trade Breece. Matter of fact, I thought that they were. I thought there was a chance they were going to deal him last draft, right? They didn't. Okay, I was a little surprised at that. You had Braylon Allen, and then, of course, Allen got hurt, so it's good that you held on to Hall here. And I think it's also important that, like, the Jets wanted a third, the Kansas City Chiefs wanted to give up a fourth. And as you establish these parameters and these boundaries of what kind of franchise you're going to be, and specific to the GM Muji here, how flexible you're going to be, and how willing you are to acquiesce from your line in the sand. What your trade demands are. Again, your trade parameters. You've got to remain beholden to that, even though it's only one round difference. But if you set a precedent, hey, listen, Muji, when it's time to flinch, he's going to flinch. So when you establish that around the NFL, whether it's the Chiefs next year or whom else next year, any other team next year, at the deadline, during the summer, at the draft, whatever it might be, now there's a little bit of a template, and there's a little bit, again, I don't want to overstate this, but a little bit of a word on the street. Hey, push comes to shove, Muji's going to crack a little bit. So I'm happy he didn't. And now, based on, the ensuing moves, what they did with, obviously, with Sauce Gardner, with Quinnen Williams, 2 first-round picks this year, 3 first-round picks next year, and the increase in salary cap and those monies getting off the books. Now, they owe a lot of money to the quarterback room next year, which is a different problem, which I'll address, more thoroughly on a different podcast here. But just keep in mind, they elected to basically punt a little bit on the Rodgers contract. So instead of taking the shot all this year, they spread it out over 2 years. And if they do cut Justin Fields next year, I believe I'd have to double check my notes. I believe it's $22 million dead cap. So you're talking about $57 million worth of money that will be in the quarterback room, and you very well might draft somebody, although you could punt and draft in 2027, as we've discussed. So that's obviously not optimal. So this all kind of ties back to it was completely in bounds for Costello to ask that. I mean, it really was. Now, when you lose your job in the NFL, if you're like Quincy Williams lost his job, right? And Quincy was very forthright, and he talked about that, and he was asked about that, and he said, I'm not happy. I've got to do a better job. I welcome the opportunity. And you know what? Since then, I think Quincy Williams has made some good plays, and he's played some much more aggressive, buttoned up, good football. So to me, that's a little teeny tiny check in Aaron Glenn's column. And these are the things you look at with a first-year coach, because it's not really so much about the macro, because the macro is going nowhere right now. The macro was 2-9. So it's those little tiny things like, all right, well, you send the message to a player that you just traded his brother, so he's not in a great frame of mind. He may or may not be on the team next year, but now how does he respond? And if he responds well, which he has, well, maybe that's a little motivation for the Jets to maybe bring Quincy Williams back, because they view him as a piece of the puzzle from a competitive perspective, from how you respond to criticisms and benchings and hard coaching. Like, this is what you're trying to glean right now. So that's why I say the macro, it's not about that right now. It's about those little tiny points of evaluation. Sometimes it's a press conference, and we've done that with Aaron Glenn, how he handles himself there. Some I've liked, some I haven't. But the way Quincy handled that, and again, I don't want to go nuts on Breece, and I don't even want to belabor this anymore. I'm going to move on to some other stuff here. But when you do that and you put yourself out midweek and, you kind of attack, it wasn't, again, it's a fine line. Like, if Breece Hall would have said something along the lines of, and didn't mention Costello by name, and didn't make it seem like it was an agenda, which, by the way, when you're writing stories, there's always some type of agenda, because you're asking questions, anticipating answers with a story that you anticipate writing. That's the way it goes. It's the way it's always going to go. All right. So we understand that. But when you do that and you Breece and you come in and, you put one on the turf inside the 5 with the chance to make it a 1-score game, and cut it to 3, that's not good in the fourth quarter. So I'm very curious how Breece Hall handles this post game. Like if Breece Hall doesn't talk to the reporters, if he showers and gets on the team bus or showers and hides somewhere in the locker room, and I hope he doesn't, but he could. Others have done that. It's a bad look. If you want to be a team leader, which I respect, although I don't think that he was perfect in how he handled that, as I've said, well, now it can't just be convenient when you're talking about somebody else. And I know that Justin Fields has a lot of allies in that locker room. He's a man of conviction. He's a man of faith. He's a man of emotional consistency. And he's a guy who plays hard. So those are the kind of teammates you want to have other teammates step up and have their back. It's the way you do it. And then if you do it and you don't play well, or you do play well, but you make a critical mistake, now you've got to be consistent in how you handle that. And if Breece Hall is, then hats off. All right. Now, I will give you a little macro here. I'll give you a little bigger picture. So you watch these games, right? And there's really not, again, if you've been a fan of this podcast, really, it's not so much about coming out and, breaking down every drive. I mean, if you're 9-2 and you're going for the first seed, or you're on the cusp of a wild card and every play matters, yeah, I'll do it. I got my notes. You guys know I have multiple pages of notes here. I do it all the time, right? But I just try to, really highlight the stuff that I think is more important. So having said that, while I gave you 2 plays that I think really hurt the Jets, obviously the 34-yard pass interference and, of course, the fumble by Hall, let me step out for a sec and give you like what I could envision next year looking like. Because I don't know about you, I'm starting to see some things that I'm liking more and more and more. First of all, the 2 players the Jets got from other teams in trades are very interesting pieces. Now, Mitchell, I know he had the dropsies a week ago, and he made that bonehead play when he dropped the ball previously with the Colts, and obviously, right as he's going into the end zone and everybody was clowning him, I get that. He is a true X receiver, and Aaron Glenn has said this. He's 6'3", he's about 205, he runs a 4.3, and he's got what scouts, and I'm not a scout, but what scouts call suddenness. Like Michi is more possession, slot, and Michi's played well, back-to-back games with touchdowns for Michi. So I start to look at next year. I say, all right, what could this offense look like? What could the team look like with the anticipated upgrades? Now, eventually, and all respect to Tyrod Taylor, 15 years in the NFL, and Tyrod Taylor was talking about this during the week where, and to be very blunt, this was the way it was with many black quarterbacks who came in the NFL. If you weren't a stud like McNair, who was drafted obviously very early, or Jameis Winston, and I'm even going further back with Tyrod, who's been around 15, Jameis more decade. But Jameis was the first overall pick. There were a lot of quarterbacks for years. I mean, certainly in the 70s, definitely in the 80s, absolutely in the 90s, and even into the earliest to earlier, like 2000s and early stages of the 2010s, where unless, again, you were a Vic who was first overall, you had to prove to people that you were quarterback worthy. Now that's unfair. That is something we've spoken about very honestly over the years. And it was something that, quite frankly, the older minds in the NFL, the decision makers, just had to get through. They had to get through it. And most have. I don't know if everybody has. Most has. And most have, I should say. So when Tyrod Taylor spoke about this week, he basically said that. He's like, I had to prove, I came and they wanted me to move to receiver. He said, I'm a quarterback. So as I set this up and what I'm about to say, the Jets obviously need a better quarterback. But man, oh man, Tyrod Taylor's the ultimate pro. Always ready, always emotionally reliable. He hasn't always been physically reliable. He's had some injuries and he's a little limited, but he's a pretty good athlete and he's a better thrower of the ball than Fields. But we all know the Jets need a better quarterback. That goes without saying. So as I plow ahead and start to look to next year, just imagine a Jets offense with a better quarterback, whether it's a stopgap if the Jets don't take one of the first round this year, or if they do, whether it's a Mendoza, whether it's a Ty Simpson, whether it's a Dante Moore from Oregon, whomever they settle on, whenever they settle on somebody, obviously the Jets will have a quarterback that they believe because they thought this with Sam and Zach, believe is going to be there ultimately their quarterback, franchise quarterback of the future. So better quarterback play. Now envision that better quarterback, that interesting prospect or that stopgap with Garrett Wilson on one side and Mitchell on the other side and Mechie in the slot and Mason Taylor as your tight end. I love Mason Taylor. And they were saying it once again on the broadcast. Mason Taylor, I really think, is going to have a chance with obviously better quarterback play, to be a guy who's, hauling in 65, 70. I don't know. I mean, maybe even more than that at some point. He's a decent blocker, at least in terms of knowing where to be. He's not incredibly stout. We knew that. He's more of a vertical guy. He's got some wiggle. He's got good hands. He just seems to know where to find the soft spot in the zone, puts his foot in the ground, pivots fast, gets himself some space. Huge fan. I think that Muji crushed that second-round pick, and I think many of you do as well. So Wilson, Mitchell, Mechie, and then obviously Mason Taylor. Now, if Mitchell doesn't do much this year or whatever, and the Jets don't take a quarterback this year, could they take one of these studs? Yeah, they could. Whether it's the kid at Arizona State, whether it's for receiver, whether it's the kid at Ohio State, no question. And then that just becomes even more interesting. So at least the shell, right, of a potential explosive offense is beginning to take form. Now, here's the other thing. Look at this offensive line. This is an incredible stat. Look at the offensive line. And now envision this offensive line with another year in the weight room, another year of experience, another year of meshing. Like, we know this because we love football, but I think some people still kind of overrate, or I should say underrate, the importance of gelling on the offensive line. Like, you just got to know, like, all right, I'm going to push him off to you. Okay, I've got this. Like, there's an awareness and an IQ and an anticipation of what the guy next to you is going to do that you really can't replicate in practice. You got to be out there with live bullets and, big boys coming at you. And the Jets offensive line is really good, like really good and really young. Now envision it next year. Now, something to think about. I'm not going to really get much into it now because there's really not much to say, so I'll just say it and move on. I mean, the whole Elijah Vera Tucker thing, he's a stud. He's never healthy, all right? Maybe Elijah Vera Tucker is amenable to a one-year deal for, on a team-friendly rate because he doesn't want to pick up and he doesn't want to move. Now, if somebody blows him away in free agency, goodbye. You haven't earned that from the Jets. But I think there's also an outside chance that Tucker's back on a deal that the Jets would feel very comfortable with. And if that's the case, and if he's ever healthy, again, that's even without him, but I'm just saying it could get even better if that happens. Offensive line is very, very interesting. Now, here's the stat, and I'm actually going to take that back. It's not even interesting. The offensive line is just good. Let me throw this at you, because to me, this should not be the case. And it's a testament to their ability in the trenches on the line to impose their will and push people around and mash people, right? And the Jets are the worst passing team in the NFL by yardage, all right? We know that. But they're number 5 in rushing. So what does that mean? I mean, very basically, it means that everybody in the NFL knows that the Jets cannot hurt you throwing the football. When that's the case, what do? You stack the box. Every single week, they stack the box, and every single week, they're number 5 in the NFL in rushing, as I said. The Jets come out, and they move piles, and they move the chains, and they accrue yards, and they're able to remain married to the run game, which, as you get a better quarterback, and you get Garrett Wilson back, and maybe another explosive offensive weapon on the perimeter, now the play action comes into play, which really opens things up. So that's very favorable. And now, listen, the other thing to it, I do think the defense is fighting. I think they're playing hard. I think they're hitting, like they are lowering their pads. Like, remember last year where they just seemed almost disinterested, averse to like really trying to make hard tackles. And a lot of that was Sauce Gardner. And that bothered me to no end. And I brought it up on the pod and I brought it up on WFAN. And that's a big part of the reason why he's gone, no doubt. So at least I'm seeing like an energy and I don't want to overstate this, but like a blossoming low level of ferocity pertaining to hitting people and wanting to hit people. And that's an identity. And I promise you, that is coming from Aaron Glenn, who is dropping F-bombs and lighting people up in film section. And if you're not doing your job, just ask Quincy Williams, your ass is on the bench. And now if I put you back in there, it's up to you. The onus is up to you to prove to me that you deserve to play a little bit more. Not me to find reasons to play you when you don't deserve it. I'm going to sit you down, figure it out. All right, your number's called. What do you do? And I again, that's a little teeny tiny check in the Aaron Glenn checkbox. All right. Now, the other thing, and this is fairly macro, and I'm not even going to identify players. I don't even know who they are yet in college or free agency. The Jets absolutely must find one more corner, one more safety, and I think one more linebacker. And that's a lot. Like, it's like I'm sitting here saying, well, you need like say if we're talking about baseball, yeah, maybe you need a fifth starter and one low leverage arm in the bullpen for your free agent checklist. Like if you're the Dodgers, I'm just throwing stuff out. Not that, I mean, they happen to have an abundance of starters, but you get the point. Like if you're a champion, there's little things you got to do. If you're a doormat, like our team, there's a lot of stuff you got to do. We all understand this. But generally, when you're bad, you have a horrendous offensive line, like so many bad Jet teams in the last 10, 12, 15 years. Almost every one of those teams that has failed to make the playoffs. Here we go. Cue the record. Longest North American team playoff drought in existence. That's our teams. Hockey, baseball, basketball. We all know that that's us. I'll tell you what, though. Look at the Giants now. By the way, did the Giants hold on and win that game? Did they beat the Lions? Wow, the Lions came back overtime. Giants are, oh, God. The Lions just scored 34-27. Wow. All right, Giants will get one chance. Either way, I think Cap is doing a really good job. I'll talk more about that on the fan tomorrow. This is a Jets thing. But all those years that the Giants stunk, right? At the end of Eli, and then obviously DeVito, and even this year early, their offensive line was awful. There's generally a correlation. If you have a bad O-line, you can't run the ball, you can't get the tough yard, you can't protect your quarterback. So it's always, instead of being like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, manageable down at distances, which is paramount in the NFL, unless you have a Mahomes or like a stud, a healthy Burrow or a Stafford, and maybe you could work around that a little bit more. But if you've got average or even slightly above average quarterback play, that is a recipe to be doomed, all right? So the Jets O-line, as I discussed before, is good. It's not just theoretically good. It's statistically provable, quantifiably really good. You don't have to worry about that in the draft. And all these other shit teams out there, you do for the most part, all right? So that's something that, like, say if they love Mendoza, and I don't know why you wouldn't, and he gets drafted first overall, and then the Jets can't get him, and they can't trade up and get him. And there's nobody that the Jets love at that, say, 3, 4, 5 spot, just throwing stuff out. Well, they might be open to a trade and get another first-round pick and have 3 and 3, and by not having to take a left tackle, which they don't, because Fashanu's a beast, or Membu is a beast on the right side, who they picked top 10 last year. So that is so important to setting up the draft board. It's a massive thing that's been so elusive to both New York football teams for a long time, and really a main reason why they've both been shit for so long. So that's that. Now, it's going to be harder to find a corner, and you got to find one. How many times, and I'll tell you, I know other teams go through this, but when it's your team and you're watching these things develop, first of all, the punitive nature of pass interference in the NFL is a fucking joke. Honestly, I can't stand it. I don't even mean to, that was aggressive, but it's true because it pertains to everything. And I think college has it right. You throw a ball up 34 yards in the air, half the way down the field, if not more, your receiver is grabbing the corner. Or if it's a linebacker on a tight end, or if it's a safety coming over, it's cover two, whatever. And so there's fighting going back and forth. Now, I know that as a corner or whatever, whomever is dropping back in coverage, you got to know when to stop. And you can't grab jerseys and you can't grab arms. We know this. But, when there's especially when it's third down and you've done so many things right to put yourself in a good position, and there's a flag for 22 yards or 27 or 34 like today against the Jets when they were winning early in the game. Like, that is just, I fundamentally have an issue with that. I would love to see the NFL fix that. Even, illegal contact, automatic first down. And, now I get it. Some are worse than others. There's varying degrees of culpability, and I don't really know what the perfect answer is. Now, the reason they do that is because if you're clearly beat, and a guy is behind you and you just grab him, after 5 yards, and it could be an 80-yard touchdown. So I get it. So that part I understand why it's an automatic first down. It's got to be punitive there. But I would love to see some sort of amendment here where there's almost like two grades to these penalties. Like and I'll let them come up with the verbiage, but my point being, there's the egregious pass interference, and then there's the one that's a little bit more benign. Same with illegal contact. I'd love to see that change in the NFL because it flips fields and it thwarts and changes so many good things, and it's hard in the NFL to do all these good things. I get it. The great teams aren't complaining about this. The bad ones and the average ones are. And I'm not saying that's why the Jets lost or that's why the Jets are 2-0. I'm not saying that at all. This is more of a commentary on the entire NFL. But as I look forward, no, it has not been fun sitting here 2-9. Of course. All right. I didn't expect the Jets to win today. I didn't expect them to go up to Gillette and Foxborough and win that last game. And they didn't. But I ask you, do you see a team, because this is the first level of analysis, because if you can't even get to this point in year one, then we got problems with a first-year head coach. Do you at least see an energy and a level of pride and an element of trying to do the right thing? And I do. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't move me too much because you're pros and you're supposed to try to do the right thing. But come on, guys, you know the difference between a team that's locked in and dialed in and trying to fight for their coach and beginning to slowly get it, that culture slowly beginning to root. And I think I see that. I see enough elements. Now, I'm not going to stand on the top of the mountain and beat my chest and say, absolutely, Aaron Glenn, 100%. But I definitely feel better about Glenn than I don't in year one, past the halfway point. I definitely do. So when I look at this Jets team moving forward, and we know all about the draft capital, that's obvious. I don't need to be redundant. But, because now, like, they don't need a number one receiver because they have one. They don't need to. I'm talking about first-round stuff. Now, you could get another one and pair him with Garrett and just try to be dynamic and explosive, and I'm all for it. But you don't need a left tackle. I don't even really know if you need a defensive end. I love Jermaine Johnson. He's going to be healthier and healthier and healthier. Will McDonald's really good. A little streaky, like he'll get none, then he'll get 2 or 3 or 4 like he did a couple of games ago. But I don't even know that you need to burn a top 10 pick on a defensive end. So if they could just figure out, and it won't be easy, but, CB1, maybe even safety 1, and one more linebacker, these games begin to change radically with some better quarterback play. All right, which obviously is the main impediment for so many of these teams. Secondary needs a lot of upgrades. Yep, I've already said that. People who think Aaron Glenn's the problem don't know football. Of course, I agree with you there. To sit here and say that Aaron Glenn is the problem is the height of idiocy. Now, that's a fine line between saying the Jets nailed it with Aaron Glenn. But, they're trying to win games. To be fair, Aaron Glenn chose Justin Fields, so I can't fully exonerate him there. But you try to win games most of the year with Justin Fields, who cannot throw the ball accurately, and Tyrod Taylor, all respect to him, is a 15-year backup. So what do you expect, right? Jets are competitive. That's a start. Let's see. Defense did well. Sherwood missed too many tackles. Yeah. How many times? He's not the only one. He had Lamar Jackson pinned on a blitz. I don't think they blitz enough either. That's something else for a different day. But he had Lamar Jackson for at least a 10-yard loss, and he had him. God, he had him. And it was sloppy tech. He went high. Now, you should be able to go high on Lamar Jackson and get away from it because he's not really strong compared to, like, Mahomes, who's thick, and obviously Josh Allen. Daniel Jones is 6'5", 225, whatever he is, around there. So that's tough. You have to go low. And he didn't, and he got burned there. But that was that, and that has been something that I do think has plagued the Jets a little bit here. I do think that they're doing a pretty good job of, for the most part, competing. Really, I think Angstrad has made some adjustments here. They found a way to get the ball to Breece Hall in space, short little flicks, 5, 6, 7 yards in the air, and Tittman had a block today that was, geez, if you are showing a young offensive lineman, like a kid, 9, 10, 11, how to fire up downhill and how to destroy and blow somebody up and free your teammate up, that was as good as it gets. It was violent. It was impeccably timed. His technique was money. Tittman moving from center has been really, really good, which goes into what I said earlier about the offensive line. What else here? Let's see. Change the game. I just don't want to be redundant. I just don't want to read some things here. Yeah, 3rd and 12, 36-yard DPI, game over. Actually, I believe it was 34 yards, but point taken. Here's the other thing. Yeah, this is so true. Defense's inability to force turnovers is what keeps us from winning. Yeah, how about this stat? Now, we know that the Jets, and they put this up on CBS, entering Week 12, this is mind-numbing, painful. It's pain. If I told you before the season, like you do a little betting, you do your parlays, you do your fantasy, whatever you're doing, right? Suicide pools or knockout pools, whatever it is. If I told you before the season started, keep in mind, Gardner was still on the team. Not that he gets a lot of these, but I say, hey, going into December, right? The Jets will have no interceptions. That's unfathomable. What level of money would you be willing to place on that bet? Without putting your mortgage or the deed to your car, you put anything up. Yeah, that's the stuff. Of course, I'll take it. Let's go. And you'd lose. So, that would have been about as bad a beat as you could get. There's nothing worse than a bad beat. Oh, my God. All right, so the Jets with no picks. The NFL, there's been, at the point when they put this, I'm sure there's been a few more, 223 interceptions this year by 148 different players. The Jets have none. By the way, the Giants are still moving here. Let me see, 34-27, 3rd and 7. Oh, come on, it's a critical play here, obviously. Inside the Detroit 30. Let's look at Jameis's numbers, dude. Jameis says 366 with 2 touchdowns. He caught the touchdown pass. Kafka's making him. I don't care if they lose this game. The Giants were 2 touchdown dogs as well. This is a very strange NFL this year. And this goes into gambling. This goes into trying to get a sense of who's who. I don't know. The Colts were crushing the Chiefs most of this game. I'm looking down at my phone now. It's 2020. What else jumped out? That Bears-Steelers game was wild. Bears won 31. What did Caleb Williams? He's coming along nice. What did he do? Shouldn't speak too early. His numbers, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Wow. 3 touchdowns, no picks, 240. Not a great percentage, 19 for 35, a little less than 50, a little more than 50%. 7 yards on the average. That's okay. But 3 touchdowns, no picks. I'm sure he ran for some too. 21 yards. All right, so they beat the Steelers. That AFC North, flip a coin. Patriots did beat the Bengals. Bengals were, I believe they were 6.5. Oh, wow, that went off at 7.5. Yeah, I got it at 6.5 on Friday when me, Sal, and Huff make our picks. So the Patriots won 26-20. Pat's are going to win 13 games this year. You know they're going to beat the Jets again. Seattle, well, Tennessee made a little move there, but Seattle won. All right. This is just even going back to the Thursday game where the Texans beat the Bills. So it really is just a wild year. I don't love it like this myself. I know it's fun and, unpredictability is good, but it's always been my opinion. And this pertains to all the sports. Like when the Yankees were dynastic and now the Dodgers, even when the Mets were beating the crap out of everybody in 86, like a million years ago, like you need to me, Warriors dynasty, the Bulls with Jordan. When you have that, Niners, all these different iterations of dynasties, whether it was obviously Montana or Young, of course, Brady and the Pats and Belichick. To me, that is a good thing because, I just think there's something more magical, and I think that there's better innate theater when you've got a team that is almost already anointed. Like the coronation's there. This team's going to win. This team from the AFC is getting to the Super Bowl. There's no doubt. If I said to you today, I want you guys to do this on the comments and I'll read some right now because I know it's going to be varied. Because if you say the Chiefs, you're out of your mind. And even if you do, there's a better chance, I think, the Chiefs don't make the playoffs than there is that the Chiefs actually get to and or win the Super Bowl. All right? They got a lot of people in front of them in the AFC. So let me see right now in the comments, who do you think is going to be? I don't need a Super Bowl winner. Who's going to be in the Super Bowl? And this should really prove my point. All right? So let me just step away for a second from the Jet stuff and just get a little more NFL specific. But again, I don't love this. I love when you've got that team that rolls in 13-1, average margin of victory, 13, 12 points, just smashing everybody, an all-time Hall of Fame icon quarterback, same with an icon Hall of Fame coach, or a defense that is just thought to be all-time, like the Ravens with Ray Lewis, the Giants with LT. These things, that to me is more interesting. Steph in his prime, Klay Thompson in his prime, Pippen and MJ, Jeets and Bernie and Mo. That to me is where sports is at its apex for myself. The Isles going 4 in a row in the early 80s, winning the cup, or the Devils with Brodeur, or some of these other dynasties. It's just, I just find it more interesting. All right. So right now, are these updated? Some of these games are still going on. So the Patriots have, let me get the whole wall. No, I'm going to go. All right. Patriots are 9-2. I'm just looking at what I have in front of me. So I'm not updating. Patriots 9-2. You think the Patriots are going to the Super Bowl? I'm not saying they can't, but would you put money on them too? Do you feel good about that? Now, I love Drake May, and Vrabel's a hell of a coach. Super Bowl? I'm not saying that. The Buffalo Bills lost to the Texans, and the Buffalo Bills lost to the Pats. So the Buffalo Bills defense stinks. Josh Allen's a beast. I love him. But is McDermott a Super Bowl kind of a coach? He might get fired this year if their season doesn't finish the way that it should, or they want it to. All right, forget about the Dolphins, forget about the Jets. Go to the North, right? The Ravens win today. They're 6-5. The Steelers 6-5. Bengals lost without Burrow. No, I know he's back, but they're done. Browns stink. All right, the Colts. It's been a great story, and I'm happy for Daniel Jones. I really am. Terrific young man. Got a bad rap here in New York, and he's now the Colts, and he's playing well, right? He's tough. He's battled through injuries in his career, and he's been a punching bag for so many of you. They are 8-2 right now. Would you put money on them to get to the Super Bowl? The answer is no. And then you go to the AFC West. Now the Broncos defense is great, and Bo Nix played really well second half against Kansas City, and I was a little surprised. I was very surprised they won that game. But they're 9-2. Do they feel like a 9-2 juggernaut? I don't think they do. The Chargers are 7-4. I like them. Giants beat them earlier in the season. So you really believe in them? The answer is no. And the aforementioned Chiefs are 5-5. Now, I happen to think, hold on. Now, let me just see something here. Don't tell me what I think may have just happened. Did that actually happen? Oh, no. Okay. Damn. Final. Lions did beat the Giants 34-27 overtime. That went final. The Chiefs are in overtime. The Colts. So now I go back to, let me do the NFC for you, because the NFC, if I could just find the standings, where is this here? I just had it. All right. Now in the NFC, you've got The Eagles, who A.J. Brown all year is squawking about the pass game, which I get every night, and they've been on primetime a couple of weeks in a row. I watch the Eagles, and I know the Eagles are good, and I know they've won a Super Bowl, but I watch them every week, and I mean, they'll go a quarter and a half without a point, right? And, 3 points and a half, 7 points and a half, 16 points in the game. I trust their offense. They're 8-2. The Cowboys are the second best team in that division, and they're going nowhere. They're 4-5-1. And I think that there's a chance to Dak, and this will be a future podcast. I think that the Cowboys could trade Dak Prescott this offseason, and I think the Jets should and will be interested. But more on that at some other point. Commanders without Jaden Daniels, nothing. Giants 2-9. The Bears lead the North. Williams has been a great reclamation project under Ben Johnson. His accuracy is so much better than I thought, and he's a great athlete. But they're 8-3. Do you really trust them to win an NFC championship game, whether they're hosting or not? I'm not saying they can't, but do you trust them? I don't. The Packers are 7-3-1, and I know they look good today, but they've been mystifyingly inconsistent. And the Lions, who are 6-4 and should be a playoff team, they needed overtime to beat the Giants today. And then you go to the NFC South. I love Baker, respect them. They're 6-4. Where are they going? They're going nowhere. The Panthers are 6-5. Where are they going? They're going nowhere. Everybody else stinks there. I think the best teams reside in the West, and I think the West is by far the best division in the NFL, definitely in the NFC. You've got the Rams at 8-2. Stafford's going to throw for 40-something touchdowns and 4,500 yards roughly as you project forward. And he's already won, and they've got a great coach who's already won. Do you trust them 100%? I trust them probably about as much as anybody, but not 100%. Seattle, really good, 8-3. Do you trust them fully? Now, I know the Niners have been banged up, and they have plowed through to 7-4. And they are a good team with a heck of a coach. Purdy's healthy, whatever. And they stabilized things when he was down, but I don't know. So the point is that I don't think, to wrap it up here, and then I want to look at a few of your comments on your Super Bowl picks just to prove my point. Watch, you'll all have the same one, and it won't prove my point. No, it will. And then, but I'll bring this back to the Jets to wrap it up. All right. And again, I appreciate you guys hanging with us. I mean, it sucks losing every week. It really does. But I told you that I'm not just going to get on here and whine and complain and yell and scream and curse. That is unintelligent communication. And not saying I've never dropped an F-bomb here. I did before. It's fine. We're adults. But I'm trying to give you next level stuff. I'm trying to push this forward because that's what you expect. That's what you want from this. And that's what we do here on the podcast. So I appreciate you guys rolling with me. Apple, Spotify, let your buddies know across the country whether you want to watch this, you want to download just the audio. I appreciate what we're doing here. All right. But as I run down the entire NFL, all those scenarios, all the teams that we'll be watching in the playoffs, there's really not a situation that seems like, wow, we are 5,000 miles from that. We just have no chance to narrow the gap. And really, as I look back at probably my most confident assertion would be the Rams. I mean, Stafford's not a kid. He's injury prone. I don't think he plays a ton longer. So even that situation's fluid. All right. The entire NFL is fluid. So if you could get another playmaker, a corner, a safety, a linebacker, and eventually your quarterback, Santa, that's all we want. We don't need much. Just that. There is a chance that the Jets take a big leap forward next year. There really is. There's also a chance they don't. If they don't get the quarterback and they don't do what they need to do. But at least there is a ray of hope, the way I see it. And I didn't see it that way with Gase. I didn't see it that way at the end of Rex going even further. I didn't see it that way at the end of Todd Bowles. I definitely didn't see it that way when I was screaming for Saleh to get fired. And I sure as hell didn't see it that way when Ulbrich came in and made it worse. So, again, small increments. I'm not trying to, have some bold, insane statement. What is that going to do? But if I'm buying, I'm buying the Jets' direction right now. I'm going to buy low, and I'm going to hope to reap those rewards downstream. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to do. All right, let me see if I can. All right, the problem with this is I've said this so many times. When I go, hey Jared, Jared, you can hop in. By the way, if you can see some of those Super Bowl Colts Eagles, I'm getting some now. I got you, man. Thanks for anyway. Colts Eagles. All right, I mean it wouldn't stun me. Is that what you'd bet on? Rams Broncos Super Bowl. All right, that will be interesting. You put money on that? I mean, these are things that are proving my point. Kansas City did win. Kansas City won. All right. Now, first of all, that's awesome for the Jets because the more, let me just make sure I'm not getting fed erroneous information here. Not that I don't believe you. Nice. All right. So the Chiefs won. That's good. The more the Colts lose, guess what? The better that draft pick is for Sauce Gardner. Now, they've already got, what are they now, 8-3? They're not going to go, they're probably 27, or I'm just throwing 27. They're not going to fall to like 17th. But hey, instead of being 28 or 29, if that can inch toward 21, well, now if you want to make a move up, that's fewer spots that you have to move up. So these are little wins. We'll take them. Let's see here. Let's go G-Men. First pick coming. Yeah. I was thinking about this. And this is not even, but listen, we all love the NFL. And a lot of tri-state area, people who listen to the fan and watch both the Jets and the Giants, maybe you'll appreciate this. So Jackson Dart did not play today, as we know, concussion. And I love him, man. I love everything about him. I love the way he places his throws. I love his moxie. I love his athleticism. I love his his whole vibe. The whole team loves him. Like, he looks the part, like he's got the arm, he's got the wiggle. He's the guy. The Giants nailed it. They got their franchise quarterback. However, God forbid, and it was probably the prudent thing not to let, that's the NFL, that's the protocol, that's not the Giants, but prudent to not have him play today from the NFL's perspective. Much better job with head trauma. Good job by them. He's going to play again the rest of the season. He's not going to sit out the next, 6 games. What if he gets another concussion? God forbid. Now, I think that Cap is going to use him differently. I don't think you'll see as many designed runs into, a safety who's coming down in the box and a linebacker who's looking to destroy somebody. Rollouts are one thing because you could throw it away. You could use the boundary to get out of bounds. You could slide, whatever. I think you'll see more of that because Cap is very aware. I got to keep this young man upright. Number one, just because I want to keep the young man upright and do right by the young man. But also, let's face it, if you're Mike Kafka, you try to keep this Giants job, which I think today was a little check in the right direction for him. And you're just, cavalierly throwing him out there because you're trying to win a game, which means nothing at this point. And then he gets concussed because you call 5 designed runs. He ain't getting the job. And if he gets hurt and if he gets another concussion, and if he were to get another one, he's out for a while. And the Giants have a first or second or third pick, and they love a quarterback. What do? I'm not even going to get into the possibilities now. Just think about that. That is something that I'm certainly not trying to speak into existence. I really hope doesn't happen to the Giants. It's been a rough year for Mr. Mara with his health and praying for him. He's a good man. He's kind of lost his way as the owner a little bit here with the Giants, but I'm rooting for him. It's a proud family. It's a good family. And they made a very adept, shrewd move, moving up, trading for a guy who's going to be a stud in Dart. Star. And when I say it, just to quantify that, top 5, top 6 quarterback in the NFL whenever he hits his prime. That's how good I think Jackson Dart is. And then you throw Neighbors in next year. You get Cam Scatteraboo next. It could be on for the Giants offensively. But that would be a really, really tough decision if, God forbid, he were to get hurt again. And hopefully that doesn't happen. But I'm going to bounce. Don't need to just be repetitive and just drone on. Jets are 2-9. If you bet them to cover just to keep the interest in the game, you made a few bucks. They did cover. The key plays, that 34-yard PI, that fumble by Breece inside the 5. it wasn't careless. He was going for he's fighting, which I respect, but you got to protect the rock. You got to. And when you call out Brian Costello, a reporter, and I hit this earlier, when you call him out for asking questions, legitimate inbounds, fair questions, and you get on him for doing his job, I'm very curious, and I'm going to go and look at this now as I sign off. I'm very curious how you comport yourself after you had a very bad moment that cost your team a chance to win the game. I don't know if they would have won, but if they score, you got a chance to win. 7 minutes to go, 2-score game, it's over. So literally, it cost his team a chance to win. I want to see how he handles it. And, if he handles it the wrong way, that might be a little more evidence maybe to move on from Breece. If he handles it the right way, maybe a little more evidence to retain him and give him a decent contract because he is incredibly physically gifted. All right. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 on the Fan with Sal. Go out there. Again, Apple, Spotify, spread the word, download it. Obviously, we'll talk next week. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, early Thanksgiving, and I will catch you at 10 tomorrow with my guy Sal on the Fan. I'll see you. Thanks, guys.